Liberty and choice. From our perspective as human beings, the topic of liberty or freedom is somewhat of a contradiction, for the experience of human existence itself arguably requires some level of abnegation of freedom imposed by the physical body. In simple terms, even a wild animal must breathe and eat. When we add shelter to our list of necessities, and most of us prefer far more creature comforts than that, we've already become deeply entangled by these mortal coils. Though most of us never consider that breathing significantly limits our freedom, this is largely because we perceive no limitation or deniability to the commodity of air. Food and shelter, on the other hand, are not perceived to be so freely available, and vast social and economic structures have been built up to regulate the distribution of these and a great many other apparently limited resources. Whether we are discussing basic elements like water, clothing, sanitation, healthcare or free time, or higher quality luxuries and aesthetic appeals, or even social aspects like connection or love, the truth is, most of our needs and desires have some potential to enslave us. What's more, though most people consider freedom to be of utmost importance, in truth, the concept of unbridled freedom generates fear for most of us, for it is often associated, at least subconsciously, with chaos and lawlessness. But despite the apparent restrictive nature of human existence itself, our reality is defined by our perception. Our experiences only tend to become problematic when we generate a great deal of dissonance with them. The perception that you are basically imprisoned can be irrelevant if you are properly aligned within yourself. An alleged prison may even be experienced as an ideal scenario if it can be made to somehow conform with movements you naturally prefer. The topic of liberty, freedom, or philosophical free will can be examined in parts. The first is defined more externally as freedom within society from oppressive control. The second, more internal and arguably more fundamental freedom, can be defined simply as availability of choice. This fundamental freedom can never truly be taken from you. It is hardwired, so to speak, into existence itself. You do always have choice. But that is not to say you will always be aware of the choices you have, for you may choose in moments to rob yourself of this freedom, to create a genuine experience of having no choice, which can be quite real. When we generate this experience, we almost always generate a feeling of anger simultaneously. For anger, not to be confused with an extreme of frustration or resentment, is always the emotional signal associated with a perception of no choice. If you feel anger, you can be sure you are expressing in that moment that you hold no choices. But even when you generate this perception and very real experience, it does not mean you are truly being denied choice. Though you may not always have control or access to exactly what you want, there is always a spectrum of choice available within every moment. Within anger, it is up to you to expand your perception wide enough to become aware of the choices you do hold, some of which will better align with your preferences and guidelines than others. These two categories of internal and external freedom are not actually as separate as they appear, and from a wider perspective, external freedoms cannot truly be taken from you either. Although there have been times throughout history and even locations on the planet today that express some level of authoritarian control, one's experience within any cultural system moves in synchronicity with one's internal subjective expression. Regardless of who appears to have control, be it a large body such as the state or a religious order, or a more intimate structure such as familial bonds and traditions, it is your individual energy rippling out and reflecting back that ultimately defines your personal experience. Thus, the allowance of yourself to freely choose internally does translate into the freedom you experience externally. In this way, the world, or should I say your world, how you see and experience it, is always an illumination of you and how you are expressing your energy. This reflective dynamic of our realities as human beings is what makes our internal beliefs and perceptions about freedom so important to how we engage externally within society, and in mass, how external systems are designed and evolve. Our underlying and unacknowledged fears and associations of freedom with chaotic anarchy, for example, are quite significant to our ability to liberate ourselves in seemingly unrelated areas of life in which we may feel constrained. Though a variety of expressed beliefs can be associated with the inhibition of liberty, be they morality, guilt, persuasion, or otherwise, fear is usually at the root and responsible for a lion's share of our restricted freedoms and mechanisms of control. Our ability to make strides to liberate ourselves from fear alone could have huge impacts upon our ability to manifest the freedoms we desire in the areas we want them most. As individuals, we can always interject more freedom into our day-to-day lives. Even within an experience in which you feel bound or chaotically out of control, you can expand into a greater awareness of choice. Though we can find dismay and dissatisfaction in the midst of celebration and success, we are equally capable of finding appreciation and joy, even amid horrible atrocity. This is the freedom of choice available to us in every moment as conscious beings, and our choices truly are powerful enough to shape worlds and manifest dreams.